Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes. Good morning.
Dr. Shealy, good morning. You know, I've got to tell you this. And maybe you might think of a prescription that you can write for me for this particular I don't know, a malady I might have. Let me tell you a little bit about it. It's happening more often. So I was at a convention with our son, and a couple hundred people here, maybe as many as 300 people at this convention, and they had a luncheon. So after the seminar in the auditorium was concluded, just before lunch, there was an announcement that, go get lunch, and it was in like this other room. And so we filed into this other room and got in one of two lines and were able to get our sandwiches. And so when I was in line, it was kind of like a 10-minute wait, and I got a chance to talk to the guy and gal in line with us, and, we became friends, and so we decided we would sit together at the same table. And then I saw another guy across the room who I knew from before, and I invited him to join us. So my son and I, the couple that were in line, and this other friend of ours were at the table. And I noticed that when we sat down, it was on the edge of the center of the room, but on this outside row. And there was a little stage there, a very small stage. It was a portable stage, and just one person could stand there. And so we're sitting down, and this woman who was running the show came up to the microphone and said, hey, a couple announcements. I want to thank the people who were, made this possible, and we're going to have our speaker for lunch, and the acoustics are terrible in this room, so you all have to be quiet. It made sense to me. So we were all quiet at our table. No one was saying anything, and a couple guys walked up toward us, and they were talking. One of them had a State of Missouri badge on. And this was an event that was at a State of Missouri convention center. Think of it like part of the university system and one of their big buildings. And so you can rent out that building, and that's where this thing was. So these guys were talking, and at our table, and they didn't. It was kind of odd because they didn't say, "Hey, thanks for letting us sit here. By the way, my name is Tom. He's Joe." No introductions. They just kept talking. They're totally oblivious to us. And that was okay. But the speaker started speaking, and these two guys kept talking. And it was hard to hear the speaker. And I was able to contain myself for 20 seconds. And then I said to the person next to me, this is where I might need that prescription. I said to the person next to me, excuse me. And I stood up. Now, everybody in the whole room saw me stand up, because if they were looking at the speaker, I was right in front of the speaker. I mean, like 12 feet away. I stood up, and I walked around the table, and in my best Columbo, Lieutenant Columbo, I used some body language, and I looked down at these two guys, and I crouched over toward them, and I was saying something kind of quietly to them, and I kind of stood up a little bit, and I pointed toward the speaker, and then I crouched down, and I said something to him. I stood up, pointed to the speaker. So everybody saw these antics that I was going through. And I basically, and I'm paraphrasing, I said to these guys, hey, I didn't come here to hear you guys talk. You're disruptive. You're disrupting everything. You need to be quiet. Okay? and then I walked around the table and sat down. And those guys were absolutely quiet. I mean, they didn't say another word. And at the end of the presentation, at the end of lunch, everybody was walking away, and I was, with the two people next to me, and this one guy university badge, hung around. And he said to me, I want to thank you for reminding me that I need to be polite. So what I'm saying a couple. So I'm saying a couple things, Dr. Shealy. One is there something I should be taking so that maybe my fuse is a little bit longer than 20 seconds, or is this? But lately, within the last year or so, I have no patience for people who are rude. I have no patience. It's like, how did they miss?
That's Sagittarian. Maybe it's contamination for me.
Okay.
I don't know why one should not tell people where to go when they're misbehaving.
Yeah. Well, I probably could have been a little more polite. I probably could have left home a few of my antics, but I wanted to make sure that these guys were put down immediately. Absolutely. with no way of getting back up, without swinging.
But again, personally, I applaud that.
Okay.
I think that,
okay.
Too much is enough already.
Yeah. And, I was trying to lead by example. But what I'm seeing, Dr. Shealy, is more people are not very polite. I was talking to our son, and he was at a convention, a military convention, one of the largest in the country. And there are some people we know who go to these, year after year after year. And one of them has been on television many, many times. And I know this guy. I've had dinner with him, and I know him, and he's kind of abrasive. Actually, he's very abrasive. And there was a line to get in, and this guy just cut in line. He thought he was famous. He's on TV, and he doesn't have to wait in line like everybody else. He just cut in. And I think my son said something like, "Hey, you're not cutting in line. Get in the back of the line like everybody else." So maybe it's genetic.
Well,
so I guess you're saying we don't need a prescription.
I think people need to, quote, stand up for reality, and I don't see any problem with that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So that's one prescription I will not need. But thank you anyway.
Hey,
Shealy, yeah.
Well, reality is reality to me, and that's the way Sagittarians always do it. We're blunt but honest.
Yeah. Well, I find I'm using my horn more, when I'm in town and people cut me off, needlessly. If there's an emergency, I understand. But when somebody it just cuts me off and puts me in a perilous position, I don't like it. And I want to make sure that they absolutely, positively know that I didn't appreciate it. And I don't pull out my gun. I don't wave my gun. I just, lean on my horn. I just lean on my horn for, a full 10 seconds. And I'm not kidding. I mean 10 seconds. I don't mean like beep. I mean 10 seconds. And then everybody looks around and they want, and, they kind of know what's happening. And maybe it'll be contagious, and maybe we will stop some of these rude, offensive, dangerous people. And just to illustrate the point a little bit more, I got a call over the weekend, and a friend of ours was driving her vehicle out of state where she lives, and this was in Arkansas, and a tractor trailer cut her off. Not only cut her off, actually sideswiped her, knocked her off the road into a pond, totaled her car, and of course the tractor trailer keeps going. And I'm wondering, the first thing, when I discussed this with Mrs. Finelli, the first thing that came to my mind was the guy driving the tractor trailer was distracted. Had to be distracted, and left the scene of the accident. And I guess at this point, no one knows who did it. But that's the kind of stuff that's going on, and it's absolutely unacceptable. People driving these 60,000-pound missiles on our roads need to pay attention to what they're doing. Even people who are driving smaller, like 2,000-pound missiles, need to pay attention to everything around them, because they can kill people, and you can't take that back. So those are a couple of my thoughts, Dr. Shealy, about what happened recently. What's happening in your world?
Well, we just had a weekend workshop, Optimal Health. It went very well, and we're busy, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so was that workshop in Springfield or at the farm?
Yeah, we did it here. We did it here at the clinic.
Yeah, at the clinic. Okay. Oh, okay, in Springfield. Wonderful. Okay, I wanted to share with you a couple thoughts. There was a country singer, and his name is Tim McGraw. And he was on stage, and he collapsed during a performance in Dublin. And his wife is Faith Hill, and so she explained to the crowd that the show is over, and explained that what happened was that Tim McGraw, her husband, when he was on stage, became dehydrated and collapsed. Now, unfortunately, he did collapse. Fortunately, he's okay. But I think this brings to mind something that we need to pay attention to, and that's hydration. And I have a feeling that a lot of us are not paying as much attention to hydration as we should. Does that ring true with you?
Oh, it's very common. Very common.
Mm-hmm. So do you find in your practice, Dr. Shealy, when people come in to see you that more than you'd like to see are dehydrated? I mean, do you see it right there in your practice?
Oh, yes. Okay. It's common.
What are some, okay, so how Dr. Shealy, how when someone comes in who's dehydrated, what are the symptoms that you see? I mean, visibly, and what do you do to determine that, yep, what you thought was dehydration is dehydration?
Well, actually, it's when you begin to talk to people. When people are depressed, when people are anxious, when people have almost any major disease, they're dehydrated. So it's not as much seeing as knowing that this is the pattern for people who are dehydrated.
Okay. And when we come back, can you tell us what we do to overcome dehydration in our daily lives? And is Coke, Pepsi, orange soda, and root beer, are they the way to fix this, or... That's Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com. NormShealy.com, and you go to his website. And Dr. Shealy, if someone would like to see you in person, how would you like them to contact you?
351-5221.
Okay, area code 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. That's the number for the clinic where Dr. Norman Shealy and Dr. Sergey Sorin practice in Springfield, Missouri. And that's Central Time, class. Central Time in Missouri. We're talking about dehydration, Dr. Shealy. And so when people, you see them in the summer, and it's really common. You see them with these great big plastic or styrofoam cups that they buy at the gas station or the fast food joint, and it's got Coke, Pepsi, orange soda, root beer, sometimes tea, sweet tea in there. Is that what we consume if we are dehydrated?
No. No, that's junk. That's junk, whether or not you're dehydrated. And I don't prefer the plastic cups, although halitosis is better than no breath at all in an emergency. And, of course, I don't like city water because I want my water free of fluoride especially, and I prefer it free of chlorine as well. But they do make good paper cups still.
Yes. Okay. So how much water without fluoride, without chlorine, do you recommend that we consume per day, spaced out over the entire day, to avoid dehydration?
Ideal
Dr. Shealy?
is to divide your weight in pounds by half, and then that many ounces. So if you weigh 130 pounds, 65 ounces. 150 pounds, 75 ounces, etc.
Mm-hmm. And now, some people would say that's an enormous amount of water.
Well, they are ignoring the body's desires, needs, health, but, that's the way it is. And, by the way, unfortunately,
is there
coffee doesn't even help calories as a beverage.
Okay. Okay, so if a person is not drinking enough water, is there evidence that is visible by color in their urine to let them know, you know what, that's not enough water?
Well, if it's dark yellow, you're definitely dehydrated.
Okay. So should it be just a very light yellow typically?
Very, very light, yes.
Okay. All right. And how many, I don't want to get too graphic here, but is there a typical number of times a person would urinate during a day, whereas more than that is probably something wrong, and less than that is probably something wrong?
Well, if you, the average for most people is probably somewhere between quite a cup, 200 cc's, milliliters, 240 is a cup, and maybe 300. So maybe a cup to a cup and a half is so. If you put out, if you take in, let's say 60 cc's of water, you're going to put out roughly that much in urine, and you divide that by at the most 300, and you'll know how many. I have to sit down on a piece of paper to figure it out because I can't think and hold the phone at the same time.
Okay. But the bottom line, Dr. Shealy, from what I can hear you saying, is that if our urine is dark yellow, we're not drinking enough water.
That is true. Now, I will point out that people who take an adequate amount of B-complex will have more yellow urine than people who take no B-complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the case with me, and I take a lot of B-complex. And so are you saying that, and this is probably important information, that if you do take B-complex, it will turn your urine yellow, and that's something that is not of concern. It's not the same as being dehydrated, yes?
Exactly.
Okay. We come back, Dr. Shealy. I'd like to tell you what I did with our water well. We have well water here at the farm, and I shocked it. I shocked the well, and I'll talk about the procedure, and I'd love to hear your opinion on, was that the right thing to do? So, Dr. Shealy, we live on a farm very much the way you do, and a number of our listeners and those in class live on farms as well. And I've always been concerned about bacteria in the water, bacteria from runoff, all kinds of disruptive and deadly pathogens in the water. What the city and municipal water systems do, or what the municipalities do and city water systems do, is they add chlorine to the water to kill these pathogens, because as far as I know, with sufficient quantity of chlorine, nothing on the planet can survive, given enough chlorination. So what I did was I decided to shock, S-H-O-C-K, our well. And here's how I did it, and I'd like to get your opinion. And here's an article from New Mexico State University. I'll put this on the website. And it's from Marcia Wright, and it's called Disinfecting a Domestic Well with Shock Chlorination. And what this article says is shock chlorination is a disinfection treatment recommended when domestic drinking water system is contaminated with bacteria. It can occur, the contamination can occur when a well is installed or when repairs are made to the plumbing. And you've got to be careful when you do it, okay? Now, if the groundwater itself may contain bacteria, if that's the case, and you're drinking that bacteria, you can get sick. So, what some some water systems do is they have a continuous chlorination system. Now, that means that you'd have chlorine, and it would be metered into your drinking water. Now, some pools have that. I've seen these metering systems where they have liquid chlorine, and it's metered in mechanically with a meter, so it's continuously pumping chlorine in, and I certainly don't like that. Now, I'd like to tell our class that you have to be very, very careful when you do this. You can really hurt yourself. So what shock chlorination does is it introduces high levels of chlorine into a water system. And here's what you do, according to this article. You open your well cap and you put in, well, let's see. You mix 2 quarts of non-scented bleach. I'm talking about regular chlorine bleach that you would add to your washing machine. 2 quarts mixed with 10 gallons of water, and you pour it into the well. And you connect a garden hose. Now, this would have to be a clean garden hose, not something that's been hanging out outside, because you're going to introduce whatever's inside this hose into your well water. So you're going to wash down the inside of the piping in your well, the well pipe. And then after you do that, you go inside and you open the faucets one at a time until you smell a strong odor of chlorine. And then you shut it off. The idea is you want to fill up the pipes in your house with this chlorinated water. Then you're going to let it sit. Flush the toilets. You're going to open all the valves to let chlorine water come from the well into your house. And you flush the toilets, and then you're going to let it sit at least 8 hours. 12 to 24 is way better. Even longer is even better, but sometimes it's hard to, run without water. Then you're going to want to flush out your faucets and get that chlorine smell out. But it may persist for 7 to 10 days. Now, that's what I did, Dr. Shealy, and it's persisted, about 7 to 10 days, but it's abating at this point. And, of course, we're not drinking that water, neither are our pets. Wouldn't put it in with, if we had fish, we don't. But if we did have a fish tank, we certainly would not put that water in the fish tank either, because it would kill the fish. Have you ever done anything like that, Dr. Shealy, to kill the pathogens in your pipes?
We had to replace the pump at our well about 10 years ago, and we did a shock treatment after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And normally, when a well company does this, they use a chlorinated tablet, and they'll drop, 1, 2, or more, depending on the size of these tablets. So I'm talking about like HTH chlorine for a pool, those type of tablets, and drop them into the well. But you've got to be darn careful, because you can kill yourself with chlorine. You can destroy your body. So you want to make sure you do not drink it. And
weapon of mass destruction.
Yes. So I don't know of another way to kill the bacteria in a well, per se. There's treatments where you can use ultraviolet light after the water is pumped from the well, but not in the well. So if you want to get it at close as possible to the source, I think that's what we might have to do.
Yes,
any disagreement there, Dr. Shealy? Okay.
We have our well checked every 3 years, just to be sure.
And I know there's some farmers in our area, not necessarily next to us, but in our area that are treating their well water with ultraviolet light because of fecal bacteria.
Right. Well, we actually do use ultraviolet light all the time because we use some of the water in making our magnesium lotion, for instance. So all the water that comes into our entire house system is ultraviolet light treated. Okay.
And I bought one of those systems. I have not installed it yet, but that's going to be installed this week. In class, here, let me tell you what that is. So it's think of it like a stainless steel cylinder, 3 feet long, in our case. And inside the stainless steel cylinder is think of it like a thin fluorescent type light, except it's ultraviolet. It's long. It's almost as long as the tube, this stainless steel cylinder. So this light tube fits in there, and it's inside a quartz lens. So it's a light inside a quartz tube, and the ultraviolet can pass through the quartz and disinfect the water. So as your water leaves your well, it is disinfected as it flows through this cylinder that's illuminated with ultraviolet light. It will consume, let's say, 50 watts of electricity, and it will be consuming that 24 hours a day. So there is a small electric meter uptick doing this, but I'm not concerned about that as much as I am about the bacteria, killing the bacteria in our drinking water from now on. And here's what happens. This is what's of concern to me. When you have these massive rainstorms, these violent weather changes, and you have flooding, well, the septic systems sometimes overflow. Some people have lagoons, and a lagoon is like a pond, but it's for waste, household waste, and it goes into this depression in the ground. And under normal circumstances, there's enough sunlight, enough evaporation for the water. The solids stay behind. The lagoon is disinfected by the sun. Everything works great. But sometimes they overflow. Sometimes the municipal water systems, the sewage treatment plants, which are at the lowest level, typically, of the city, because they want gravity to assist in bringing the sewage downhill for treatment. When they overflow, and other water flows from rain and so forth, and runoff, contaminate these treatment plants, and then you have raw sewage, floating around, and it may float into wells, or your neighbor's well may be contaminated from animal sewage or whatever it may be, and that may enter into the aquifer, which contaminates your well. Absolutely, positively can happen. So in my case, I'm going to protect myself just the way Dr. Shealy did, 24 hours a day with ultraviolet light. Now, what it doesn't do is it will not protect you from, chemicals that are stored in your neighbor's garage, that when the garage gets knocked over by the inrush of water, or carelessness in the use of chemicals and gasoline and oil and whatever else. They may have insecticides, herbicides in these barns and garages when they get contaminated, when they contaminate the well water because of the flooding conditions. So I'm concerned about that, but you can't fix that with ultraviolet light. That you need a carbon block filter for. And that would be like Berkey or ProPure. Dr. Shealy, your thoughts?
Absolutely. I'm with you all the way, Big Blue.
Okay. So, class, as the weather conditions get worse, as the storms get worse, as global climate change becomes more violent, you might want to consider getting a water filtration system. I will give you my bias. My favorite is ProPure, and another one that you can consider is Berkey. And I would suggest you do some research and see if you can find the one that's appropriate for you. We found out that our animals absolutely, and I'm talking about dogs and cats, absolutely prefer carbon block filtered water like Berkey or ProPure, and that's what we give them. And during this experiment, there's a slight trace of chlorine smell, and I thought, let's see if the animals will shy away from it. I put it down; they won't go near it. They are smart enough to know that chlorine is dangerous to them. I'm talking about the cats and the dogs. So if you have if you have chlorine in your water, there are a couple things you can do. One, you can heat it up and help volatilize the chlorine. Put it in a big spaghetti pot, heat it up. But then again, you're going to be breathing it in the kitchen if that's what you do. You can put it outside, kind of let the chlorine volatilize into the air, and it'll be safer for your dogs and cats. It doesn't help with the fluoride, but it will help remove the chlorine from the air, let it sit for a couple hours. But I tell you, going into a shower at a hotel or motel, it's unbelievably different from what we have here at the farm. It's asphyxiating to me to shower with municipal water. Okay, Dr. Shealy, any comments on that?
No, I think you've brought up an extremely valuable bit of information. And again, at the bottom line, if you live in a city, you must filter your water. Otherwise, you are going to be very, very slowly poisoned. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can take poison quickly, as Heinrich Himmler did, and he killed him very, very quickly, or you can poison yourself slowly by drinking city or municipal water with chlorine and fluoride. So, how much does it cost? Well, it's going to cost a couple $100 to either get, a Berkey or a ProPure system. It's going to cost a couple $100 to get an ultraviolet system if you put it in yourself. Dr. Shealy, you changed your email address. And can you tell us what your new email address is and maybe share with us why you changed it?
Yes, it's normshealy85@gmail.com. And the reason I changed it is I bought a new computer 3 months ago, and it's been the greatest hassle of my life. Office 365 and Windows 10 are the worst scum on the face of the earth. So I needed to divorce Bill Gates and all of his nonsense. And believe me, it's taken me 2 weeks, and I'm about half there. But I don't want anything to do with Outlook or Microsoft.
What's interesting about Bill Gates is, Dr. Shealy, in a past life I was a computer jockey, and I built a lot of computers, and I was a consultant to school systems. And here's what I noticed about Bill Gates. They took a really great operating system called DOS, disk operating system. And if you had Microsoft DOS, although you didn't own it, it was licensed. And Bill Gates figured out a way of selling something that you didn't own. You could, pay for it but not own it. They actually controlled it, and he would license it to you. But DOS worked pretty well, and the hard drives lasted, darn near forever. We have computers that we've here at the farm that we built, in the 1990s, like 1993, that are still operating with the DOS operating system, and the hard drives still work. And what he did was he came out, allegedly he stole the graphical interface from Apple, stole it from Steve Jobs' company, and implemented that, and it was called Windows. And then Windows was really hard on the disk drives, very, very hard on the disk drives, and it made them wear out way, way faster than they would if they were just running the DOS operating system. So there was, Windows 3.1, and then Windows 95, and then 95A, and 95B, and 95C, and then there was Windows 98, and then there was Windows 98 Second Edition, then there was Millennium, and then there was Windows 2000 and XP, and it kept going on and on. Every time that you bought one of these operating systems, they had defects in them, bugs, as they were called, and you would buy the next version for $89 to fix the bugs in the previous version. So Bill Gates and company were knowingly selling defective products to their unknowing customers, and then charging them $89 at a minimum without labor to fix them. So it was a never-ending system, and I believe they were in bed with Intel, the microprocessor manufacturer. I can't prove this, but this is my belief, that they were in bed with Intel, and what Microsoft would do is they would create another version of the operating system that was more bloated, that would require more resources from the central processing unit, and people would get, Windows 95 version A, and then they'd, upgrade to Windows 98 to fix the problems with 95. They'd find out they had new problems with Windows 95, and then they'd say, wow, my computer got really slow, I guess I need to upgrade my computer. So it was a never-ending series of upgrades of the operating system of Microsoft, and then upgrading the computers and buying new computers. It was absolutely out of control. Out of control.
He's being kind. I consider him the most evil person that I know anything about.
Yeah. Well, isn't he the guy that said, had an equation that said, we need to get to zero carbon. And and it involves people, it involves energy, and to get to zero carbon, well, you have to either get rid of all energy or get rid of all people. Which really means get rid of all people.
Well,
that's Bill Gates.
Yep.
And he's the same guy. He's the same guy that is he said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, that we've got a lot of disease in this country, and we have in the world, and we have overpopulation. And if you mix population control and disease, you can get rid of some disease by eliminating population. He didn't say it that way, but that's what he meant. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back, and let's talk about fast food and what happens when you feed fast food to mice. Inflammation explosion when you feed fast food to mice. Something Dr. Shealy's been talking about, avoiding fast food for all the years I've known him. We'll be back. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and his website is normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. His email address, if you'd like to contact him, is normshealy, NORMSHEALY, the number 85, Norm Shealy 85 at gmail.com. Dr. Shealy, there's a healthfreedoms.org web page that says Bill Gates, vaccines are the best form of population control. Parents have continuously refused vaccinations for their children in fear of what they could cause, though for some small illnesses they may be necessary. There has been a constant stigma against them due to fear of the unknown chemicals that they may secretly be getting injected into the children. Bill Gates has now said that he thinks vaccinations could be the answer to both problems of overpopulation and global warming. That's what the article says. So,
well, as I said, I think he's the most evil man I know anything about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know a guy who used to work in at the Microsoft complex at headquarters, and he once said good morning to Bill Gates, and this gentleman, my friend, was chastised by the security department, like, you never, ever address Bill Gates because you distract his concentration. It's unacceptable. So you can't say hi to him at his Microsoft complex if you work there, or at least you couldn't, as my friend told me, because security will come down on you because he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it if you distract him. Wow, it's not like he's in his office; he's just walking down the hall. I've never heard of anything quite like that. That'd make me not want to work at Microsoft. Dr. Shealy, there's a news article about an unknown and deadly disease. It's called Disease X, and it's added to the list of potential global epidemics that could possibly kill millions. And so we're talking about the familiar ones of Ebola and SARS and Zika. Well, the new one is called Disease X. Researchers recognize that it's a threat, but they don't know how to treat it. Have you been reading about Disease X?
As a matter of fact, I've seen a tiny bit about it, but not enough detail to really comment.
Right. That's where I am on this. I've just seen a small amount, and I also have not seen enough. But it's dangerous, and there's last year, North Korea is believed to use VX nerve agent to assassinate the half-brother of dictator Kim Jong-un at an airport, in a Malaysian airport. And it was said that man-made viruses and diseases were especially dangerous because humans have not built up a resistance to them over time, leaving them free to sweep across the globe, and governments and doctors haven't caught up. So I can see where these man-made killers can literally wipe us out, either by accident or intentionally. And
nuclear
it's an outrage.
It's an outrage. Good enough to kill everybody.
Yeah. How awful, right? I was watching a video on Netflix last night with Mrs. Finelli. It's called The Borgias, and it's about the Pope in Rome hundreds of years ago. And I'll tell you what, there was another, I would call it a documentary. It's called House of Cards. It's like the White House and the president and, the aides and the detractors and the allies and how ruthless it is in the White House and in Washington, D.C. Well, the Vatican back then was no exception. They were just as ruthless, killing people, poisoning people, cutting their heads off, stabbing them, poisoning them, all to gain the power to become the Pope and then tell other people what to do. Unbelievable. If you want to watch the Borgias on Netflix, and if you are a Roman Catholic, it may make you want to leave your religion. It's that bad. Have you heard of anything like that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I know about Lucretia Borgia, although I'd never gotten all the details. But, basically, let's face it, up until at least the 17 or 1800s, the Catholic Church was just about as evil as anything can be. Popes and priests and everything else. I mean, they did some good, but along the way they were absolutely ruthless.
Right, and that's what this series is showing: how ruthless, how corrupt the Vatican was. Absolutely, and it was about the same thing. Everything's about money and power. That's what it was about: money, power, and control. And the Vatican could seat and unseat kings and queens.
Oh, and did.
It's amazing how much power.
And my suspicion is that behind the scenes there's still some stuff going on, but that's true in every field.
Yes. And, we've learned about these mega churches and how they're squandering millions and millions of dollars on, jet aircraft. And, I mean, what does a preacher need his own plane for? Really? Why does a preacher need his own plane? They can't fly coach? I mean, really? All based on donations? Begging for money? Letting people think that if they give enough money to the church, they'll get a front row seat in heaven?
In heaven.
I think
now,
from my perspective,
Betsy, you'll be called an infidel in a minute.
Yeah. Well, I was raised Roman Catholic, but I do not attend a Catholic church because I know that my God, I can talk to my God, and I don't need a broker. I don't need a pope. I don't need a bishop. I don't need a cardinal. I can do it just my God and me. And Mrs. Finelli believes the same thing that I do, that we don't need a broker. And we don't want a broker, especially a broker who says, if you don't show up at our church on these days, at these times, and sit in these seats and donate 10% of whatever you've got, you're not going to get a front row seat. That just turns us right off.
Oh, anybody listening, you can understand why I love Vince. Philosophically, we're so similar.
Well, I think, Dr. Shealy, I just think we just lost that last student in our class, just by me saying that, and then you seconding it.
Be prepared, students.
Dr. Shealy, you've been talking about, let me see if I've got this quote. Dr. Shealy, what do you think about McDonald's? And then the response is junk, right? Or poison, right? Did I get that right? Poison?
You got it. It's right.
Yeah.
Right on.
There's an article in blacklistednews.com. Here's the headline. Immune systems go haywire when mice are fed fast food, causing an explosion of inflammation. So fast food is, according to the article, fast food is unhealthy. It's loaded with salt, sugar, and fat, and a whole lot of calories. That's the first line. It's often pretty low in essential nutrients as well. It's well documented that fast food should be consumed in moderation, if at all. Yeah, I agree with that. If at all. Actually, never. Indeed, most people know that takeaway meals aren't ideal, but a recent study has shed light on just how bad going through a drive-through really is for your health. And it talks about these mice that were fed fast food, and their immune systems went crazy. And they got an explosion of inflammation. And isn't inflammation the precursor to cancer, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, absolutely. Interestingly, Vince, I've said this so many times, but in 1962, I went to McDonald's and took one bite, and my taste buds said, vomit. And I fortunately avoided vomiting, but I spit it into my napkin, threw the whole thing away, and I have never been back, and I will never go into a fast food restaurant. The only real fast food is a handful of nuts and some fruit.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that being said, there's a new trend, Dr. Shealy. This is just, I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this, but I'm going to try. So there are people who have decided that, wedding rings are, fine, but, they're really not all that permanent. So they are not getting wedding rings or wedding bands. What they are doing is this new social trend is to have a piercing. So, for example, instead of having a band of gold or whatever metal around your finger, you have your finger pierced. Now, in order to make sure that this piercing doesn't fall out, it has to go like deep into your skin and then have some kind of an anchor. So think of it like, think of it like a diamond ring, for example, with the diamond staying visible on top of the skin, but the rest of the band of the diamond ring being flattened out, and so that becomes the anchor under the skin. That is kind of like what people are doing now. They're also piercing through their skin. I don't know how to explain this. They're taking let's say gold balled earrings, okay, and putting one on either side of the finger, but a crossbar going under the skin. And that's what they're doing in lieu of a wedding band. And that's like the minimum. It actually looks like they're taking an implant, like a dental implant, screwing it into maybe even to their bone with a little piece sticking out, and that would be the stud of the implant. That's the kind of nonsense that's going on. I'd love to hear what you think about that when we come back. Is this a good practice, or is this absolutely nuts? So, Dr. Shealy, these piercings, these rivets being put under the skin in lieu of a wedding band, your thoughts?
Well, I would like to say that it's insane and revolting and dangerous, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how is the play?
It is, I'd be afraid to shake hands with a person who had an implant in. No, really, I would. I'd be afraid.
I agree.
Just shaking hands would hurt them.
Got hidden.
Yeah,
but this idea of putting rings into your nose, your lips, your tongue, your nipples, and God knows where else. I mean, I think it's crazy. It's desecration of the temple.
Mm-hmm. I was traveling many years ago, and had the family with us, the children, and everybody was hungry, and the person assisting to take our order said, "May I help you?" And she had this thing in her mouth, and it was like a tongue ring, and she said, I looked at her. She said, "Can I help you?" I said, "No, no, you can't. No, you can't." No, I said, and I'm paraphrasing, but that thing that you're wearing is revolting to me, and my appetite is gone. It destroyed my appetite. So I'm
good on you, and there's a good old Sagittarian type bluntness.
Yeah. Well, and I meant it. I meant it too.
Well, it's true.
So it is true. We had I'll just open the kimono a little bit more. We had a gal who was helping us with catering at the Get Prepared Expo. And, as the MC, I went over to the kitchen prior to lunch, and, I asked everybody how it's going, if they're ready, for me to make my announcements. And one of the gals had one of those piercings in her face. And I looked at her, and I said, "You have to take that out. You can't wear that here." And that was the last time. Yeah, I'm serious. That was the last time that she worked for us. I would not. And she was pretty. It's not like she needed additional decoration. She's a pretty girl. The last thing she needed was to pierce and look like trash. That's what she decided she was going to do. It was very, very sad. Very sad. Dr. Shealy, I was reading an article about this man, and he had a life-threatening superbug. And doctors were treating it with antibiotics, and they're having a tough time, and it wasn't working all that well. And so the Yale School of Medicine recommended using a virus from a local lake called a bacteriophage, bacteriophage, a bacteria to help treat this guy's superbug. And do you have any thoughts about bacteria resistance and bacteria eating viruses?
Well, interesting. Bacteriophage is a virus, and there are more bacteriophages in numbers on the face of the earth than all people, animals, plants, bacteria, and normal viruses combined. They are everywhere. And we obviously have not even begun to open the door to those that can be useful. But, a bacteriophage can consist of only 3 genes up to hundreds of genes. And obviously they can be useful, and I'm delighted to hear that. I saw the article.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is more research is necessary, and this actually could be a lifesaver for maybe millions of people, right?
Yes. Now, of course, the pharmaceutical mafia won't like it, and Bill Gates won't like it, but other than that...
And in this article, and I'll post this on the website as well, it says around 700,000 people already die annually due to drug-resistant infections, including tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria across the world. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. It's almost like the Dark Ages. We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. And if you'd like to call his office, that number in Springfield, Missouri is 417-351-5221, 417-351-5221. That's the number for his clinic in Springfield, Missouri. Dr. Shealy, there's something going on that's really, really disturbing with Amazon. And there's an article that talks about Amazon drivers, people who are delivering Amazon packages to people's houses, are now taking photos of the front door when they're delivering packages. And now they claim that's to show you that, well, they've left them there. Here's your front door. Here's the package, right on your front step. And so this is this practice of taking pictures of your front door is quietly being rolled out. So the Seattle-based company says that the new program will help people find packages. Now, the company says the pictures will be uploaded on Amazon servers. Now, the question that I have, of course, is, what else are they doing? I mean, this is beyond the pale. Taking pictures of your front door, and of course, all of these pictures will have GPS coordinates, so they can say, here is exactly where that location of that picture is, within a couple feet. And it seems to me that companies who are very, very, very profitable now are in bed with the United States government corporation.
Well,
it's an absolute outrage. So
now you've moved into the ultimate problem of the world, the Committee of 300. The Committee of 300 is behind the scenes, truly the evil empire.
Yeah, and they're absolutely out of control. Literally out of control. Well, they are doing things that...
Thanks to Woodrow Wilson, they're here at all. He really opened the door for the first big time. I mean, they've been around even long before him. But he opened the door by founding the Federal Reserve, which is the number one contact to the Committee of 300.
Yeah, and how about the major media players like the New York Times, the Washington Post, who are complicit in the rollout? They're all part of it. They are literally all part of it, and they covered up. They remained silent to what was happening. And so, whenever I see the New York Times or the Washington Post come up on my screen, I click close. I do not want to participate in that. I will not help them by giving them any revenue at all. That's how I feel about the New York Times and the Washington Post. And it's not just them. It's not just them.
It's CNN,
the Council on
it's
Foreign Relations. Yes, Erin Burnett, pretty brunette, on one of those talking finance head programs, where they tell you how you can, make money, and actually they're encouraging you to lose money, but it's all disguised as news. Well, she's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Erin Burnett. Yeah. So if you think that this is not engineered, I think you're mistaken, class. It is engineered. It's engineered to design to deceive us, to manipulate us, to steal from us, and it's working really, really well. As a matter of fact, all the presidents except one, well, maybe two now. I'm not sure if Donald Trump is related. It's all the presidents for sure except one, possibly two, are related. Literally are related, including Barack Hussein Obama. He's related to the Bush family, the Clinton family, the other crime syndicates, the other crime dynasties that were reigning in the United States.
Well, they all,
another outrage.
Actually, interestingly, all of them date back to the royalty at the end of the Roman Empire. And ever since the Roman Empire ended, the royalty have been trying to get together, and they finally coalesced it, if you will, about 300 years ago and a bit, into the Committee of 300. If people have not read the Committee
Randy
of 300...
in Houston. Yeah. Randy in Houston, you're on with Dr. Norm Shealy. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are y'all doing today?
Great.
Well, Randy, how can we help you?
I just wanted to ask the doctor a question, just get his opinion on something. I've been having an issue on my lower right side that's generally just been kind of like a dull, it's not really a pain, it just kind of just like aches. But about 2 weeks ago, I started having some really sharp pains while I was on a trip, and it actually kept me up pretty much all of one night. Now, when this started about 6 months ago, I went to a GI doctor, and because I thought it was kind of around in the area of my appendix, and he said that, hey, your symptoms start like that for an appendix, but they get worse. But he I believe it was an ultrasound that I had, and it came back. He says, you've got no problem with your appendix. And then this past week, my GI doctor said, well, because your mother died of colon cancer, it's been 5 years since you've had a colonoscopy. Let's do a colonoscopy just to rule that out. And that came back. I had no problem in my colon. And I'd just like to get Dr. Shealy's just opinion about maybe what's the next place I go.
Interestingly, where I would go at that point is to an excellent medical intuitive, because if they can't find it, now I have to admit that appendicitis can come and go as a minor to moderate problem many times before it becomes bad. And the first thing I thought of before you mentioned that, when you mentioned the lower right side, I figured you were talking about the appendix area. So I think there is a strong possibility that you have subacute, if you will, appendicitis. But I would contact Cayrandall May, M-A-Y. You can find her contact information on my website.
Okay. And can you spell her first name again?
C-A-Y. C as in Charles, A-Y. She's the best available medical intuitive at the moment.
Okay.
Randy?
Yes, sir.
Randy, K. Randall May is a USA Preparedness instructor. And Dr. Shealy, is it okay if I describe my...
Oh, of course.
My situation? Okay. With K. Randall May. Class, you may find this very difficult to believe, but I'm going to tell you what really happened. So I was in Dr. Shealy's office, and I wasn't feeling too well. And Dr. Shealy said to me, I'd like to call a medical intuitive friend of mine. Would that be okay with you? I said, sure, absolutely. So he went into his office, and he called K. Randall May, right then and there. Talked to her and explained a little bit, about me. I mean, very, very, very little. K. Rendell May came back with a analysis, diagnosis, prognosis that was 100% accurate. 100%. I am not kidding. I was absolutely stunned. And she came back with this prior to the hospital's diagnosis. And she came back with a regimen and a treatment, which is what I'm undergoing right now. What I'm saying is, how is this possible? You know, it sounds like smoke and mirrors. I'm here to tell you that I experienced exactly what Dr. Shealy is recommending that you do, and it was right on the money.
And you didn't physically
Dr.
meet
Shealy,
with her?
did I? No.
Okay.
No.
She lives in Arizona.
She knew nothing about. She knew nothing about me. Dr. Shealy, can you help me explain, you know, from your side of the equation exactly what happened? You know, maybe enhance what I said.
I've worked with medical intuitives since 1973. And a good medical intuitive, you know, they can be anywhere from 70 to 95 or 6% accurate across the board in making a diagnosis. All they need is your name and birthday. Some of them need a picture, but most of them don't. And there are some really good ones. The best in the country is Carolyn Mace, but she doesn't even do private sessions anymore. So Kay is the best available one that I know. And I've known Kay for 30 years at least. So, you know, I still resort to those at times because even though my intuition is pretty good, it's not, for that particular thing, it's not as good as hers.
Well, I'm going to give her a call. Because you know, wait a minute. If you want to wait a minute, you won't have to look it up. I can look in my book and get her phone number for you. It is 602 404 8646. That's very good. I appreciate that.
Hey, good on you. And you know, let me know if I can be of any further help, but I hope she can help you go further.
Hey, look, thank you very much. Y'all have a great afternoon.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Randy, when you call her, feel free to drop a few names, Dr. Shealy's and mine, okay?
Absolutely, I will. Hey, thank you.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Interesting call. And I cannot explain my reaction to how accurate she was ahead of the hospital's diagnosis. It was quite impressive, Dr. Shealy. I mean, I was stunned by it. Absolutely stunned.
Well, you know, back in 1973, I had my first experience with Henry Rucker. I put in a spinal cord stimulator on a patient, and after the surgery, his white blood count went up to 46,000. We thought that somehow the surgery stress had activated an underlying leukemia. Henry walked by the patient's room and he said, "Oh, he doesn't have leukemia. He's just got something wrong with his liver. He'll be out of here next week." It turned out that he had what's called an inflammatory response to the liver because of the 46,000 white blood count, and he was well within a week.
Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. So, Dr. Shealy, this couple in Germany spent 5 months in intensive care after 5 months in intensive care after eating canned green beans. Well, it contained botulism. It's a killer, and it's one of the most powerful toxins known. But this married couple from Germany got it from eating beans that had botulism in it. Now their son escaped it because he said it didn't smell right. These beans didn't smell right to him, and he wasn't going to eat them. But mom and dad did, and then they spent 5 months in intensive care, paralyzed, and I guess they are pulling out of it. But botulism. So,
well,
Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts about?
Theoretically, were they home canned or store bought?
No, it looked like they were store bought.
Boy, I thought theoretically the canning process should kill even botula, but I guess you never know when your time has come.
How about this, Dr. Shealy? I have seen tomato products in cans past the expiration date, and the cans will have like a bulging. If you look at the lid on a can, it has these circular rings, and it allows you to see if there's pressure inside the can with the bulging lid. If you see that, what is our recommendation?
Quickly.
Absolutely, positively. Yes.
Yeah, get rid
Throw
of
it
it
away.
as fast
Okay.
as possible. And
Yeah,
if it
so
opens
class,
and smells
do
bad,
not-
I would not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And be careful.
Yeah, so class, yes. Now, you can eat some canned foods past the best buy date. Yes, you can. However, if there's any bulge in the can at all, throw it away. Throw it away. Don't risk the 89 cents or the 49 cents or whatever you've paid for that can for your health, because it will be way more expensive. Now, Dr. Shealy, can we minimize our risk of catching, diseases that are caused by these pathogens by boiling our food in a pot with a lid on it on the stove? Will that help us?
Theoretically, you should be able to kill most things if you sterilize it with adequate boiling.
Mm-hmm. And how long is that boiling? Is that like 10 minutes?
Well, to be pasteurized, you need 30 minutes.
Okay, but you destroy some of the value of the food by boiling it, right?
No question about it. Just heating it, of course, is what most of us do with just a couple of minutes of boiling. But the longer you boil it, the more you've destroyed some of a lot of the antioxidants, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Shealy, here's an article, Yahoo and Yahoo.com. And would you believe it? They are saying that men's sperm counts are dropping, and scientists don't know why. Really? Scientists don't know why, Dr. Shealy. That
we know
why.
I know. It's because of the Committee of 300 purposefully setting out to get rid of us. And basically, they were 150 million when I was in medical school, and now we're down to 40 million, last time I heard. And when it gets to 20 million, we no longer are fertile.
Mm-hmm. So, to recap, are we saying that it's the toxins in the air, it's the toxins in the water, it's the toxins in our food, it's the electromagnetic radiation, it's the cell phone radiation, it's the television?
Yep.
Television transmission, radiation, radio, computers, power lines. Am I leaving anything out?
No. Nuclear, well, don't forget nuclear contamination.
Mm-hmm. So put all that together, and sperm count is down, fertility is down, and women and couples are resorting to fertility clinics because they can't conceive.
Yep. Plan.
Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm looking forward to being with you next Monday for 2 hours, and we've been doing this 6 years plus. And thank you so much for all that you contribute to our health and wellness.
Well, thank you, Vince. Great, always.